So we've learned that React takes care of DOM changes for us using something called virtual DOM. We learned that we build the websites with components, and this idea of unidirectional data flow, where data only flows one way so that it's easier to debug our code. Then the final thing that really made React stand out is this idea of, hey, I'm just the UI. The rest is up to you. What do I mean by this? Well, remember how with Angular, it came with all these things built in? That is AngularJS. It was a framework, and a framework is kind of like a whole kitchen. It gives the developers all the tools necessary to build an application. So if you're a cook in a kitchen, well, you get the oven, you get the knives, you get the drawers, you get the pots and the pans, you have the stove, you have everything for you, and this is how you cook, or this is how you build a website. It's very opinionated. On the other hand, React said, hey, I only care about this whole idea of components and virtual DOM, and I only am going to work with the view, the user interface. Everything else that you need, well, you can just use other modules, other libraries, and mix and match and have whatever you want customized to your need. So it was a library, a UI library, which is not like a kitchen. It's more like, let's say, the stove. They gave you the stove to cook your soup on, but everything else, like knife, cutting board, spoon, well, you can pick whichever one you want. It's up to you what you use to build that soup. All we give you is this oven. And the key idea was that because it was so small, you can learn once and write anywhere. What does that mean? Well, React doesn't make assumptions about what technology stack you use. All we give you is, hey, here is this idea of components of a blueprint that we can use a massive JavaScript object to make changes. And here's also a robot that, well, interacts with the DOM and makes changes for you. But because of this, we actually are able, because it only focuses with the UI, we're actually able to move React to other places other than, well, let's say the web. For example, we now can have different robots that interact with different views, and all they need is this main React library or blueprint of how to, well, look at a JavaScript object and say, hey, change this UI. So now you could have things like React Native, and this little robot can look at this blueprint and say, change the view in a iOS app, an Android app, and although it might not know anything about the DOM, it only needs to know about views in a mobile app. You also have things like React 360, which is VR apps. And again, using this blueprint of React, I can use it for VR apps, and this little robot or library can focus on VR. We also have things like Electron and React Desktop that allows us to build desktop applications, and they interact with Windows and Mac OS and Linux operating systems. We even have things like React Blessed that work with the terminal and the command prompt. And because of this, React was able to use this concept and have developers that originally just wrote for websites on the browser to now use the same idea and the same principles and the same JavaScript code to build desktop applications, to build VR applications, to build mobile applications. And this idea of cross-platform really took off with React. And you'll notice when we start building our projects that we actually import two libraries in React. The core React library, which is this little robot, and the React DOM library, which is this specific robot that only knows how to interact with the DOM or the web browser.